I describe my work as traditional, vintage-inspired, and historic. I pretty much keep it, for lack of a better term, all old school. My name is Derek McDonald, and I'm a sign painter. I was the quintessential creative kid that would flip over his math test and draw silly pictures on the back. And I was also, and still am, into old cars. So I started going to all these car shows, and I saw lots of pinstriping on motorcycle tanks and hot rods and lowriders. And I started getting really into that, and that led me into the world of lettering signs because they're very parallel worlds. And that's basically how I dived into it. I just genuinely was really into anything with a historic feel or, a vintage kind of feel to it. When I begin to work on a project, the most important step is breaking into my reference material. I've got really old, rare sign painting manuals and trade books and magazines. Old yellow page books, they have great illustrations. I collect vintage matchbooks. Right now I have over 700, and each one of them has awesome, really inspiring artwork on them. I'll jot off 3 or 4 sketches, I'll refine it, and then I make the sign. Materials I work with vary. Of course, my main thing is paint, and that's a very specific paint designed for industrial art. So it's oil-based. It's called lettering enamel. When I work with glass on a storefront window, I try to create almost like a little fantasy world. Even if it's just one window in one storefront and somebody's just gonna walk by it for 8 seconds, at least I created that little tiny fantasy world for just that short amount of time for that person. And they might look at something I made and go, that's the way they used to do things. So it all kind of comes back to that nostalgic feeling. Not only do I go paint glass windows on site, but I'll also do pieces in my shop. My shop is based right here in Reno. So let's assume I'm gonna make your traditional wooden sign that's gonna hang over a storefront. I'll have to go to my scrap wood pile, which is in my garage right now. I've got tons of old signboard. I'll hand cut the boards, I'll edge seal them, prime them, and then base coat them. These were blue collar, get it out the door things back in the day. Some of these shops were union, and they would have, 10 sign painters all in a line, and they were knocking out these. And you can see they developed these techniques over years and years and years where they can get a really efficient sign or a really efficient letter painted in a very short amount of time. There's just a certain feel to some of these signs where you go, that's 1930s sign right there. You'll see these certain characteristics in the letters where they would pull the brush and flick the brush out at the very end, and you'll see these little brush flick outs. That was a speed and efficiency technique. You only see that in those old vintage signs. One of my favorite things to work on is old vehicles. Up close and personal with, old truck doors, doing lettering jobs on old trucks. I have a buddy who's a vintage truck collector, and he bought this truck from an old fellow in Idaho. It's a 1959 Chevy step-side truck. So I'm gonna paint Declo Cattle Company and a big black and white cow. Then I'm gonna do the process of aging the sign back. So the process of creating an aged sign or a distressed sign is a multi-step process. I kind of thin the paint down a little bit. I put a little bit of talcum powder into the paint. It actually flattens the sheen, so it won't be super high gloss. And the paint will be kind of diluted, so it's not very opaque, so it's already kind of translucent. Once it's dry, then I just start wiping back with some solvents like acetone or mineral spirits, and you start rubbing back on the letters, and you follow the same direction that your brush strokes go. That way you reveal back the actual brush strokes. What I really get out of the end of the day is creating that nostalgic feeling, and when I think I've really nailed that, that's the biggest reward I get.